Well, Matthew's a 19-year-old young man, and he's cheeky and he's determined, and most of the time he's a lot of fun, and he loves cycling. He's a young man who, at the age of 12 months, we were told that he would never walk or talk, and we politely declined to accept that prognosis. And so we worked with Matthew through his various physical and intellectual impairments, I think is the technical term. And eventually he learnt to walk, and then he started to ride a small bike with trainer wheels. And it was interesting to watch him at that stage because he suddenly discovered that he wasn't restricted in terms of the parts of the world that he could access, because he could go places in a way that walking just wouldn't let him at that stage. And we were very lucky with him. At about the age of 7 or 8, he was invited by the physiotherapist at the therapy service that he was attending to participate in a group called Wacky Wheels. Wacky Wheels is a program that helps kids with disabilities learn to master the bike and become safe on the bike. And it was coached by John Armstrong and a physiotherapist from the therapy service. And Matthew got together with 8 or 10 other kids doing a whole range of cycling drills, and he thought he was the ant's pants. And it was because he was able to be part of a group doing physical things together. For him, being on a football field, on a tennis court, any of those sorts of things, and doing things as part of a group physically was just simply not a viable option. So that's where his cycling really started, and he moved from there from that bike with ordinary outrider wheels to a standard bike which had what are known as Taddy wheels. Now, Taddy wheels are made by an organisation called Technical Aids for the Disabled, which has branches across Australia. And they're a set of outrider wheels that sit about 60 or 70 centimetres out from each side of the bike, and they run on the wheels that are normally seen on a golf buggy, and they attach to the bottom bracket of the bike. And they have a spring in them so that as you lean into the corners, you're protected from falling over, but you start to have to find your core balance. And so Matthew rode with those for a while, until John Armstrong said to me one day, "You can bring the bike next week without the Taddy wheels." And I confess I looked at John as if he was stark raving mad. And I got this funny look back as if to say, "Well, what are you looking at me like that for?" And I said to John, "Are you sure?" Yeah, he'll be fine." "John, I can't run along behind him hanging onto the bike if he's trying to ride without the outrider wheels." No, he'll be fine." So the next 3 sessions, John spent probably more than half of each session racing along behind Matthew, or with Matthew, with one hand on the back of the saddle and the other hand on the front handlebar. And gradually the hand on the front handlebar disappeared, and it was just the hand on the back of the saddle, and he was riding on a grass strip with all the other kids in the group at that stage. And then John let go. And I just sat there, and I couldn't believe what I was seeing. And he let go, and Matthew went 10 or 15 feet, or depending if you want to go metric, I suppose that's probably 4 or 5 metres. And I was just blown away. And so the next week, John took the kids up onto a local oval adjacent to where they'd been training, and set up an obstacle course using cones. And he said to Matthew, "Now you go and ride out there and turn around at the end, do a U-turn and come and ride back." And Matthew rode, and he rode out. It didn't quite manage the U-turn, but he turned around and he came and he rode back. And it was a blistering, cold, windy day, and it was pretty tough riding. And I just sat there and cried because I couldn't believe what I was seeing. What I was seeing was Matthew suddenly developing an independence, a capacity to do things in a way that was the same as everybody else. He was riding a bike the same way as everybody else was. I mean, he was wobbly, but there are plenty of people on bikes around the world who are wobbly, me included. And it was just phenomenal to watch. And he's gone from strength to strength with his cycling. He's moved from that group when it came to an end, because it was a time-limited program, into a program that was called Junior Cyclists. It was run here in the ACT, where at that stage there were about 40-odd kids, ranging from about, I don't know, 7 or 8 through to about 15, who would get together at the back of the Australian Institute of Sport and ride around the car park. And they were doing drills and skill development and time trials on the road around the car park. And he had such a ball because he was there doing stuff with other kids. He was just part of the mob, and he got buckets of encouragement from the parents, buckets of encouragement from the kids. And that program for him is now, it's been 5 or 6 years since he's been involved in that program. But there are kids from that program who have gone on to compete for Australia in Commonwealth Games, or who are riding professionally overseas. And when they come back to Australia, and if they're back in Canberra, and Matthew happens to be down at the local cycling circuit doing some training, and they're down there, they pick him up and they take him for a ride, and they do interval training with him, and it's just like it was yesterday, and it's just so fabulous, and he just thinks he's the ant's pants when that happens. So I'm really chuffed about it. He's actually been responsible for me getting back on a bike. Shock horror. And he's now reached the point where he's cycling where his father can't keep up with him. So for him to go out and do some serious cycling, we have to find fitter and better skilled people to actually take him out. And that's a really lovely challenge to have.